Item 7 is budget reviews of Public Works. Public Works Commissioner Miller's here. Steve, you want to give an overview first? And
I will give a very brief overview and then turn it over to Mr. Baker and Commissioner Miller. The Public Works budget can be found on page C58 of your budget. You'll notice that the total budget being recommended for 2018 is just over $6.5 million, which is about a $166,000 decrease from the 2017 amended budget. One item of note is that through various reorganizations that Commissioner Miller has taken to the executive's office during 2017, there's been a reduction of 1.5 employees. So you'll see a reduction in the full-time wage line item and also a reduction in the part-time wage item, and then of course all the associated benefits flow with that. But that is an item of note that Commissioner Miller or Mr. Baker can speak to in more detail. The overall operating budget, so if you look at supplies and services, conferences, repairs, in vehicle operations, there's a net increase of $1,000 over 2017. The internal service line item, you'll notice that that's increased by about $45,000. The largest item in that category is the internal service chargeback from the indirect cost allocation plan, and that was about $36,000 higher than the previous year. So that's kind of what's going on there. You should also all have an email from the Commissioner's office with a note for myself. She's proposing an amendment to her recommended budget, and that's what that email is all about. She'll speak more to that. I believe she also has a video. But all good news, in my opinion, from the Public Works office. So
it's nice to have someone submit a budget to us for a change.
I'll turn it over to the Commissioner Miller and or Brian and go from there.
Commissioner Kleinfeld first, please.
I'm not sure what email he's referring to. I don't know if everybody else.
There was a copy on your desk as far as
Okay. There's no, that's different than what you just showed. Let's see.
It should say forward budget request SCADA.
It's under the graph there.
It's the same thing? Okay, thank you.
This one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's very good news to report. One, we turned a budget in, and it was on time, and even better news that expenditures are down and revenues are up. So as Steve said, expenditure budget is down about 2.5%, and revenues are up 2.4%. So what that means is a net reduction on the general fund impact of 8.2%. So the general fund bottom line has improved 8.2%, and I'm not sure of many other departments that can lay that claim, but we're proud of that. A small portion of the savings is budgeted for the continuation of the countywide drain match grant program, which the commissioners approved just a couple months ago. So we started this, as you know, this year with a portion of the savings we achieved, and want to continue that as well with continued savings that we've achieved. And that program, as you know, allows communities to match the county funds and incentivizes them to assist, allows us to assist them in their drain projects in the community. And a lot of those drains haven't been maintained or improved for many decades. So Steve mentioned we're down 1.5 FTEs, one full-time engineering tech and a part-time or 0.5 clerk typist. So staffing is down. Now, as Steve mentioned, per the email, since the budget was submitted, we are proposing an additional savings, which has no net impact on the general fund. We're requesting a 0.5, so a part-time position in the wastewater division, and that's to bring some of our SCADA services in-house.
Why don't you explain what that is?
I will. SCADA is a public works computer system that remotely monitors and controls sewer levels. And not only sewer levels with the sinkhole, we can remotely see how much flow is going through the sewer. whether we need to store some flow. It also allows us to track our pumps. Are our pumps working? Are they on? Are they off? So right now we have a contractor doing most of that work. And by bringing that in-house, we can not only save money, provides greater control, and also allows us to cost effectively manage our ongoing SCADA improvements. So again, the wastewater disposal district pays for this. They're going to save about $75,000 by bringing this in-house. We need to amend, if you're so inclined, the general fund budget. I think it's around $51,000 as an expenditure. There's an additional revenue from the wastewater disposal district, and then that district is going to save $75,000 as a result. So all in all, we think it's a positive, and rather than paying a contractor $80 to $100 per hour, we can have a part-time position do a lot of that work for us and save everyone money. Lastly, I just want to briefly talk over the last 10 months. Commissioner Miller has accomplished a great deal, which she will touch on a little bit this afternoon. In terms of some of the general fund budget efficiencies, we've reorganized the entire department. We've eliminated several top positions, which has saved money and established new reporting structures within the office, and we now have division managers, three key division managers. We eliminated a number of vehicles, including take-home vehicles. Surprisingly, it doesn't seem that revolutionary, but we're actually partnering with all the other county departments, which I understand wasn't done completely in the past. For example, HR, we're following all the HR policies, and we're using HR to hire our employees. We're working with information technology on digitizing our records and beginning the acceptance of credit cards over the counters. Treasury, we're allowing Treasury now to invest our funds rather than staff doing that on their own. Corporation Counsel, we're working with them to reduce our lawsuits and pass expensive outside legal fees. And finance, we are actually transitioning to the finance department's accounting system, which has not been done in the past for some of the drain funds. And we're also inviting our auditors in for the first time to take a look at our books, and we are acting like any other department in the county, and we're opening, and as many of you know, we're holding open and transparent drain meetings that many of you have attended as well. So with that quick overview, I'd like to turn it over to Candice Miller.
Thanks, Brian. Let me just say, Brian's doing a great job as my chief deputy. As you know, I sort of poached him from Sterling Heights. He was your finance guy, so you've been listening to him giving finance reports for a while, Joe, and Rob. But anyway, so we thought we'd have him sort of give you the overview of the finance. I hope you're all seeing this video. Yeah. We on your monitors? Okay. We thought, oh, we'll try to make a professional presentation here, so we came with the bells and whistles. And also, we have our annual report. I hope you all have a copy of here that I'm just going to touch on. I don't want to spend too much time here, as much or as little as you want me to, but it basically just sort of goes through what our first 10 months in office have been. Obviously, our major project has been the interceptor collapse on 15 Mile Road, and I'm sure you've been following how that's all going. That was at the first, everybody said it could be a 3-year project, could be a $150 million project. So it is essentially fixed now after 9 months, and it was a $75 million project, of which we got $5 million grant from the 2 different grants, a total of $5 million from the state. We are just finishing the filling everything in our pre-cut, and then we're going to be a restoration of 15 Mile. And we hope to have 15 Mile Road open. We said by the end of Christmas, although now it looks like we might beat that time frame as well. So we're not exactly certain, but things are going very, very well. So we're excited with that. And obviously that's taken an incredible amount of our time. However, that's not the only thing we have going on in our department. Some of you have been out when we've been doing drain inspections. For instance, there's 3 huge storm drains in St. Clair Shores that run from East Point and Roseville, discharged down into Lake St. Clair that were built in 1959, 1960, have never been inspected. We are inspecting those, as you all know, and one of them we started inspecting. We found in East Point there was an entire apartment complex that had been, their raw sewage had been entering right into this storm drain. So we think 250,000 gallons for a year for about 35 years directly into Lake St. Clair, which is, in very technical terms, bad, very bad. So, and we're finding some other things. We're looking for illicit connections. We're doing all kinds of different storm drain inspections. As Brian said, many of you have been to the drain board meetings. So I think we've started with about 8 enclosed drains in Sterling Heights, which are smaller storm drains, but they run along all the principal roads, Canal, Shaner, Mound, Van Dyke, et cetera. And we're looking for illicit connections or sedimentation or what have you, degradation of the pipes. We're doing that sort of all over the county. One pilot program we hope to undertake here, which I'll just tell you a little bit about, we're very excited about, as all of you know, as you see what's happening down in Toledo with their drinking water supply because of all the phosphorus in that. That's not particularly inherent to that. All of these agricultural drains have a lot of that going in. We're actually looking at doing sort of a pilot program where we do a filtration system, almost like a filter on a cigarette, I guess you could say, where it would have the ability to take out phosphorus and other contaminants before it entered into the Clinton River and then ultimately Lake St. Clair. So we're trying to, I hate to use the term think outside the box, we're trying to be creative about what we can do for water quality in every way. I was here in August and you were very gracious to approve an amendment to our budget so that we could start a match, 50-50 match program with communities for drain maintenance and drain cleanout. And just since August, we've actually done projects, and hopefully that's in your agenda packet as well, but we did one in Ray Township. We did one in Macomb Township. We've done several in Harrison Township. We just finished one in Chesterfield Township. Their board just approved another $10,000 so we could do some more in Chesterfield Township. We were talking to Shelby Township the other day and others. So, and we've opened it up to everybody in the county. We have several very large drain projects that we're going to be announcing, not today, but shortly in Warren, that are big, very big. And we think that those will be very well received and long overdue, like decades overdue. So a number of different things. And I guess the last thing I would say, if you just take a look at the front page of this, and Chairman Smith was out there as well, this is one of the GLRI programs projects that we are managing. There's about $8 million worth of those in the county. Those are the Great Lakes Restoration Initiatives. So we have one on the Clinton River Spillway. We've got another one in Macomb Township with what they call the McBride Drain. That's right outside their township hall, and then that sort of meanders through the center of Macomb Township. This one is the Partridge Creek Glody Drain. There is actually a Partridge Creek besides the mall. There's actually a Partridge Creek. It was all overgrown. Chairman Smith said he used to play golf out there. In fact, we found a couple of golf balls literally while we were out there, so I knew he was telling the truth. But we have cleaned that thing out. It is so beautiful. You can't believe the wildlife and the nature and everything that's coming back there. And so we're going to be talking to the county a little bit about perhaps putting a walkway or a bike path through there. In fact, just on that note, I will mention one other thing, and then I'll any questions that you might have. We are looking at everything that we have jurisdiction over in the Public Works. I mentioned to you that we found 3 different properties that the Public Works owns that we're going to put up for sale. For instance, the Public Works, the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District actually owns the piece of property on the northwest corner of M59 in Garfield. And you know, in Macomb County, it doesn't get any better than that. So we've appraised these different sites that we have. We have one in 21 in Sugar Bush. We've got another one in Sterling Heights on just off of Ryan by 19 Mile. And we're not in the land business. So we're going to sell these properties, put the money back into the drainage districts, and use it for drain clean out or whatever we need to be doing that for. But we're really trying to look at everything that we have as an asset. And so just as one example, and I'll conclude with this, is what they call the Sterling Relief Drain, which runs parallel between 16 and 15 Mile Road. And it was 5.5 miles long and about 300 feet wide. And obviously we need to maintain the drain, but we don't need all this land. And we've been spending literally hundreds of thousands of dollars just to mow the grass there. So we've been talking to the planning department here, and long story short, we now actually are starting to get together some design work to actually build a bike path along there, which would almost start from the beginning of our county, and it would intersect with Freedom Hill, which of course already has a bike path all the way down to Metro Metropolitan Beach, which will always be known as Metro Beach in my mind, whatever they call it now. So anyway, we're trying to think about what we have that we could better advantage the citizens of. They own these assets, and let's try to use them as we can. So anyway, I thank you for your time this afternoon. So if you have any questions specifically about any of the items on our budget, we're willing and able to hopefully answer those questions for you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time.
Very good, thank you. Does your department plan on, at one time, Public Works did a illicit discharge program. Largely it was funded through state and federal grants, but those have went away. Is there any of that ongoing, is that anything being done now or planned to be done in the future under your administration?
In a very big way. In a very big way. We have undertaken that already this year. As I say, the examples that I talked about, the 3 storm drains in St. Clair Shores, we are checking all of the one, for instance, called the Stevens Drain, that runs from East Point down, it discharges by Blossom Heath, actually. That's where we found the apartment building. In addition to that, on that particular storm drain, we've taken almost, I want to say, I think 80 to 100 samples for illicit connections. And we have the ability to run the samples at our Chapaton pump station, so we've been doing that like crazy. So we're doing that with every drain that we inspect. That's a critical component. It's a marquee issue for us, is to make sure we do the IDEP, the illicit connections. So all these storm drains that we're looking at in Sterling Heights, now I don't expect to find any illicit connections in those kinds of drains, but we're still going to check them anyway. And so we are absolutely doing that on every drain that we're inspecting.
Very good. Thank you very much. Questions from the commissioners? We have, yes. Yeah. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. First, I never thought I'd be relieved to hear we have a $75 million problem with a sinkhole, but it's a relief considering what it could have been. Yeah. And, I'm pretty sure I express a lot of appreciation for the entire board for the work you've done there. The speed in which you've done it, the professionalism in which you've handled it, the cost savings and that you've considered in moving that forward. Just a couple of, and also on the overall budget, I'm glad to hear that you're actually looking for ways to reduce costs while doing quite a bit more with the department. So that's very impressive, and I appreciate that very much. Just a couple questions, and you may not know the answer to this, but why does the commission own those original properties? I don't realize this was before your time, but do you have any idea of why we acquired property on M59 and that sort of thing? Is there a history there?
I think what happened is, for instance, in the property on Garfield and Hall Road, that was built when they put the Garfield Interceptor up. Now, how many years ago was that? Yeah. And they bought it because they were probably staging their equipment, et cetera, when they were doing that. But that's many, many years ago, has gone by. So, in fact, if you go by there today, you see Frady is staging all his equipment while they're doing M59. Yeah. I called them and said, we own this land here. And he said, well, we have to stage here. MDOT promised us we could do it. Anyway, I got a bit of a deal with him, so he's paying into mid to lease that property. But of course, we give nothing away here, right? But as I said to him, I said, look, man, we want to be good neighbors. We want M59 to hurry up and go. So anyway, but now I have my for sale sign. He's like, you can't sell this. I'm still staging. I said, yeah, maybe you can work a deal with the buyer. We'll see. But anyway, we are not in the land business. Yeah. The other piece of property that we have at 21 in Sugar Bush, they actually bought that because they were going to do a corrosion control project, which we are very interested in. And this, what happens is, ever since the Clean Water Act, sort of an unintended consequence to that, the Clean Water Act was good. However, in the sewers all over the country, you have now a large amount of what they call H2S, hydrogen sulfate, which is very acidic, and it degrades the concrete of these sewers. It really speeds up their life expectancy in a very bad way. So you have to inject ferrous chloride in to dissipate this gas, okay? So anyway, they bought that property because they were going to do that. So I'm saying, listen, we want to do this, but why should we be having these tanks with this chemical right at 21 in Sugar Bush Road? There's neighbors around there. Plus, now with Cabela's, that property's gonna go crazy. You could put a nice restaurant or something there. I didn't think it was the best use. Anyway, long story short, I won't go through all the details, but we talked to MDOT, and we got them to the correct answer, that they are actually gonna give us a bit of property right at the ingress going northbound on I-94 at 21 Mile to use that for our ferrous chloride tanks. And so we're gonna get that at no cost. Now I'm gonna sell that land, put the money back in the drainage account.
Are those pretty much the only parcels, or are there numerous other parcels, or is it just a small handful of parcels that you're aware of?
Well, obviously, the one in Garfield is the big one,
Yeah,
right? I
right.
mean, that's
The
worth,
next one.
let's face it, multi-million dollars.
Mhm.
I can tell you offline what our appraisal says it's worth. I'm not want to say that too much publicly because we intend to try to get our big buck for it. But the other one is what they call the Hawk and Drain in Sterling Heights off of Ryan there. And I don't really know why they bought that, but it was bought for this drain. But it's not necessary. There's no reason that we need to have that. And they've had it for decades. There's some other things. They've got actually a couple of different leases that they've leased with different, for instance, Comcast, which is on Van Dyke in Sterling Heights, is leasing part of the Sterling Relief Drain for their parking. I'm not really opposed to that. I'm just telling you it's there. And, you know, there's actually a billboard on a drain that is being leased. We're looking at all this stuff. I don't have every answer yet, but, you know, I'm a picker. I'm a
Yeah.
digger.
Does
I've been
it-
digging, trying, what is this now?
Does the money from the sale, for example, the M59 property, does that go to the county, or does that go to the drain district?
It will go into the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District, because the MID bought that land.
Any chance we could get 75 million from all these sales?
You know, one thing on the MID, one other thing, you said it's actually a less price. However, what we are doing in addition to fixing this, we never want to have another sinkhole, obviously, there or anywhere else. And so we actually have a SAW grant where we are inspecting all of the MID, as an example. We've got a number of different SAW grants. There's 17 miles of underground in that one drainage district, and we have inspected, we're almost completed now inspecting the whole thing. And as you might imagine, there's other issues. Nothing to that extreme, but issues that have to be addressed. So, you know, we're going to start putting these things on a normal maintenance project, right? Capital improvements program, so you're keeping up with these kinds of things. And we're really inspecting all the various drainage districts, what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So we don't have that happen again. And we can hopefully pay for it without raising everybody's rates. You know, just make sure we're maintaining it all.
Thank you. I just have one other question, if I may, Mr. Chair. And that is actually more for Steve, if I could. The question is regarding, I look at the budget, and it shows the decrease for this upcoming year, which I think is fantastic. But it does show a substantial jump from the 2016 to the 2017. You know, it goes from 5.339 to 6.677. Is there a reason why there was such a substantial jump in
Well,
that year?
again, the numbers you're looking at for 15 and 16 are actual numbers versus budgeted numbers. So there's been a number, at least this year I know, and going back into 2016, there were a number of vacancies. So you'll see primarily the full-time wage line, you know, the budget is quite a bit higher than the actuals, mostly due to vacant positions, would be my guess. I mean, if you look at, you know, the operating budget for the whole office is not that large, it's 100,000 or something. So it's all in the wages. So you got the, you know, vacancies, you know, you got budgets versus actuals.
Okay, so there was just a lot of vacancies in that year.
Yeah, and
and that-
you'll probably see this, we've seen this in other departments and throughout the course of the budget cycle here, where you won't necessarily, it looks like an increase, but budgetarily there isn't an increase. It's just, you'll see the same thing next year at the clerk's office, for example, because of the vacancies happening this year.
There are problems with the clerk's office? No, I'm sorry. Anyway, thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner
you.
Majak.
Thank you. Thanks for coming here, Candice, and I think I speak for the whole board. Thanks for putting together all the drain meetings. We've all learned a lot. We really appreciate being a part of that and appreciate what you're doing there. But one question here, you said that we're leasing land, public works land, or easements to these private companies. Are we getting paid for any of that? at all?
Yes.
Okay, and that's
Yeah,
going,
they have
where's that going
contracts.
into? The Public Works Department, or the drain fund or something?
It goes into the specific drain fund. In the case of this billboard that's on one of our drains, it's going into that particular drain. And so, yeah, they're accounting for it properly.
Okay,
The
so
thing
you're
is
looking
whether
to
or
make
not
sure
we should
everything's
be.
legit.
We're looking to make sure that everything's okay. It does
Okay.
appear to be okay, although some of these things, we're going to renegotiate the price
Okay. Okay.
a bit.
Let me just ask one more question. I know I mentioned this in a public meeting before. The governors had that proposal or plan that said Michigan short billions in infrastructure. Okay. I understand the road part, like when Brian Santos comes here and we're spending $60 million a year approximately on roads. 51% of roads in Macomb County are in poor shape. I'm just wondering, what does that mean in terms of like infrastructure below ground? You know, does it mean, outside the sinkhole, you know? So you guys go and look at these drains and storm drains, and do you come back to us or the county or taxpayers and say, hey, we got to spend $100 million, you know, on new drains and cleaning that? So what does that mean? I understand roads because it's above ground and
Right.
it sort of has to be done, but I don't understand the numbers. What does that mean for sewers in your department in terms of the needs for sewers or costs?
I think, Commissioner, the best way to get a handle on that is what they call asset management,
Yeah.
which is a big buzz term now throughout the industry. But we have now begun that in our department this year. So we have a very snazzy piece of software that we call Next Gen. And we've been feeding Next Gen with all of the, as we do all, for instance, even the storm drains, all these storm drains, as we're inspecting the storm drains, we are developing the software that's compatible so that we can put all of the information that we found, photos, shows different.
Hard copy information.
Hard copy
Which is a
information.
national thing, that this is new
Right.
throughout the whole country, this software.
Right,
Right, okay.
that's right. So we're doing that, and we're doing that, as I said, we're doing 17 miles of inspection in the mid. That's all going to go into our asset management. All of these, for instance, Chapaton, we've done a complete schematic of that in 3D, et cetera, that we fed all into this asset management. And one of the things that we've got this program now doing, not only, it might say, okay, here's a generator here, you know, and this was the age of the generator. Here was the last time the generator was fixed, except the thing now has the ability to spit out a work order to our crew and say, time to check this, time to do this, rather than, geez, I hope Joe remembers to go look at the generator again, you know? So you can use the technology to really help with that. But as far as expense, a lot of this stuff is very old. And in fact, talking about Chapaton, you know, you've got these different drainage districts. The mid is 11 communities. The Chapaton, as Veronica knows very well, is what we call the 8.5 mile drainage district. And that is St. Clair Shores, East Point, and Roseville. And I've met with all those mayors and said, you know, these are the places that we spill. In other words, this is where we have discharges after the heavy rain. And we need to either separate sewers, or we need to build bigger retention here. So we have got to have a master plan for all of this. And it's going to be expensive, but we have to make a plan. We're not going to fix it tomorrow, but it can't just keep going on like this every
Right.
generation.
Right.
And
But it's going to take time. There's a lot of sewers. It's really big, and
Yes.
I still have to meet. That's Vince Astorino,
Yes.
who deals with that. I still want to come to your office to look at that.
Yeah.
So, but what does that mean exactly? Are we talking about like new pipes, new systems to clean out the water? That's the thing that I'm trying to grasp.
It's
Concrete of pipes. Are we talking about machines that
well,
clean the water?
in the case of the 8.5 mile drainage district, for instance, St. Clair Shores is about 75% separated. So they still have about 25% of their city that needs to have their sewers separated. East Point is only 20% separated. So they have a long way to go. Roseville is maybe, 70, 80% separated also. But of those, as we've been talking to them, every time they do any kind of construction project now, they will be separating if they're on an individual, particular street. They need to think in terms of green infrastructure that can be helpful. But it's going to be an expensive fix. There's no way around it. And so we've been talking to them about actually going out, trying to make a plan of what we'd actually have to do and how much would it cost. Because I think, if you've been following all these articles in the Detroit Free Press, it had a very extensive week of articles. You might have seen me talking about Jim Nash, who's my counterpart in Oakland County. Good man, good friend. And Oakland County is our neighbors. They're our friends. But guess what? Friends don't always dump their sewage on the other friend's head. And we don't like that. So they have to do something. And I think the MDEQ is now looking at actually raising the standards for what's allowable from these retention basins to be discharged. And if they do that, we, and also Oakland, everybody in the Great Lakes Basin, certainly in Michigan, would have to upgrade. I mean, you force all of our hands, which I'm in favor of.
Okay. Yeah, again, the governor comes out with those numbers, and for myself and for residents, it's hard to understand below ground and separation and pipes. I think road construction concrete is easier to grasp, and I think easier to grasp with the numbers. I think, but so this is a work in progress for your department. You think in a year or two you might come back to us or the public and say, this is what we got,
Yes.
and this is what it's going to take to do what we need to do in the county. Am I right on that? Or?
Yes, you're right. We are doing that, actually. We are putting together a request for proposal for a master plan for the whole county.
Gotcha.
So that would include the 8.5 mile, the mid, and quite frankly, we're also looking at the northern part of the county. Because, as you know, you've got Washington Township, who's building their own sewage treatment plant, which only services a quarter of Washington Township. So, your ability to develop beyond that is hindered, obviously, because you don't have the underground. And that's so for a number of those communities up there. So you've got about 3 or 4 of those communities now going to build their own little sewage treatment plants. Is that the best way? I don't know. So we've brought all those township supervisors in and talked to them about, should we create another drainage district here together? What is the best way to do this? Or do we continue to run the 26-mile road interceptor up? How much will that cost? That's all going to be part of this master plan. There's never been really a master plan in Macomb County for underground, and we should have one. If there's ever been a complaint that we've all heard a million times, is when you start driving a bit north and you run into all this traffic and everybody says, why didn't they have a plan for these roads, a better plan, right? Because now you can't even move, when they built all these subdivisions, which are beautiful, right? But there was, and I think from an underground standpoint, we still have an opportunity to do better planning and allow the local communities to control whether or not they want to have development or whatever they want to do. But we need to know what the capacity would be for them.
Very good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Thank you,
coming here
Commissioner.
today. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Sauger.
Yeah, thank you, and just, I enjoy hearing what you got to say, because you know what you're doing.
Well, I don't
So
know,
far,
Merv.
okay. I always was
trying.
curious about the place, and I bring it up every time, is the area between the Red Run Drain, between Van Dyke and goes over to Chicago Road. And you can get out of your, I got out of my car the other day and walked down there, and I know it's one of your projects, but has somebody looked at that already? Because you can throw anything in there you want, hide anything in you want, and nobody's gonna see it.
The Red Run Drain is really is really where the George W. Kuhn, that's the big retention basin that's in Oakland County, that's where they discharge into the Red Run Drain. So we are looking at how we could monitor that better for various kinds of contaminants that might be in there. At the same time, at some point, we got to get Oakland County to stop. Their system is designed for every time there's 1 inch of rain, it spills, it discharges. Well, it feels like every time it rains, you have 1 inch practically, so it's discharging all the time. But yeah, we do need to look at that. You've got a couple of very large drains, as you know, in Warren. Bear Creek is another one that we're going to be that we are looking at. As I told you, we're going to be announcing a couple of big projects. Some very large enclosed storm drains that run along your main roads and under 696 that we've hopefully going to get a SAW grant and have an announcement here shortly on a big one there again. And we'll be checking them for everything.
My other question is, the pipes you got going down 15 Mile Road, The new ones, are they all, is that gonna be covered up?
They're almost, you mean the bypass? They are, as we speak today, they're almost gone. That we've been demobilizing for the last several weeks. And that bypass was 2 black parallel pipes that ran along 15 Mile Road. They're almost all gone. And the pumps and everything are almost all gone. We're trying to figure out if we're gonna sell the pipe, or should we keep it, or what we're gonna do with it. So I think we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do as far as the pipe, but they're pretty much gone. This weekend, we'll be closing the intersection at 15 and Utica Road, because we had to close it last January, where we had to put the pipes under there, so we didn't have to keep that road closed all these months. So this weekend, there'll be a road closure. We've got it up on our website. Hopefully everyone's aware of it. We've told all the businesses to know that's just gonna happen this weekend. We'll finish pulling those black pipes out of there and reconstruct that intersection. And that'll be the end of the black pipes. It'll just be a bad dream. I will. You know, one other thing about the black pipes, I know they just look like black pipes, but that's what saved us from having to discharge into the Clinton River. And I know I mentioned this before, but I always do, because I think it's important that we can tell our constituents. We, since January 1st, did not discharge 1 drop of raw sewage into the Clinton River with that interceptor, because of that bypass worked so well. And we had 2 different instances and very heavy rain events where we were literally within an inch of having to discharge, which would have been an environmental disaster, and that did not happen.
Great job, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? I see no one on the list. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Always good to hear from you.
Thanks
and,
very much,
your
Commissioners.
team.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you.
Very good. Need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Commissioner Toga, supported by Leon Gillette. Please vote.